She was left to die by her own kind. Then a human broke every rule to save her asterisk. The acrid smoke from her crashed fighter still burned Zephyra's lungs as she dragged herself across the jagged rocks of Titan 7. Each movement sent lightning, bolts of pain through her shattered body, her violet blood leaving a crystalline trail that sparkled in the alien sun's harsh light. Where her left leg should have been, only twisted metal and flesh remained, crushed beyond recognition when her ship had spiraled into the planet's surface. The Battle of the Crimson Nebula had ended 3 hours ago. Her own people, the proud Velakari Empire, had declared victory and moved on to their next conquest. But victory meant nothing to the broken and dying left behind on this forgotten world. Zephyra's golden eyes, once bright with warrior pride, now dimmed like dying embers. As she pulled herself toward a cluster of purple crystal formations that might offer shelter. Honor through sacrifice, she whispered through gritted teeth, her translator flickering with damage. It was the Velakari way. Perfect soldiers lived to fight another day. The damaged were abandoned to die with whatever dignity they could muster. Her commander's final transmission still echoed in her mind. Regrettable casualties. The Empire demands we advance without delay. The twin suns of Titan 7 blazed overhead, their combined heat making the air shimmer like liquid glass. Zephyra's naturally bioluminescent skin, usually a magnificent display of shifting blues and silvers, had faded to a sickly gray. The pain was beginning to fade too, which she recognized as her body's final surrender. Her dual hearts beat erratically, struggling to pump blood through her damaged circulatory system. So this is how the lineage of House Stormwind ends, she thought bitterly. Not in glorious battle, but crawling like a wounded animal on a nameless rock. The Velakari prized perfection above all else. A warrior who could not fight was no warrior at all. The sound of footsteps on crystal gravel made her freeze. Instinctively, she reached for her plasma blade with a hand that trembled with exhaustion. The weapon was long lost in the wreckage. But old habits died hard. Easy there, came a voice speaking in the universal trade language. Not the melodic tones of Velakari speech, but something rougher, more emotional. Human. Zephyra's hearts hammered against her ribs. Humans were the enemy, unpredictable, chaotic, dangerous according to all Imperial doctrine. She had shot down dozens of their ships during the battle, never seeing the faces of those she killed. The human came into view, moving carefully with his hands visible. Male, she thought, though human gender markers were subtle to Velakari perception. He wore a dusty combat uniform with medic insignia, a red cross on white fabric that stood out against dark green material. His face was weathered and scarred, his expression unreadable to her alien sensibilities. "You're losing a lot of blood," he said, kneeling beside her despite the obvious danger. "Military?" "Wing Commander, 3rd Assault Fleet," Zephyra managed, her voice crackling like breaking glass. Not that rank matters now. The human's brow furrowed, mouth tightening in what she couldn't interpret. "They left you behind. I am damaged. The Empire cannot waste resources on retrieving the inefficient." The words tasted like ash in her mouth, but they were truth. The human muttered something her translator couldn't process, then began unpacking a medical kit from his belt. "I'm Lieutenant James Morrison, United Earth Medical Corps, combat medic, specialized in xenobiology. Why tell me your name?" Zephyra asked, genuinely confused as darkness crept at the edges of her vision. "I am your enemy." "Not right now," Morrison replied, injecting something into her shoulder that immediately dulled the searing pain. "Right now, you're just someone who needs help." He worked with practiced efficiency, applying biosealant to her wounds and stabilizing her damaged leg. Zephyra watched him, unable to reconcile his actions with everything she'd been taught about humans, their supposed brutality, their chaos, their lack of honor. "My people would not do the same for you," she admitted, the words painful but honest. Morrison paused, meeting her gaze directly. Maybe that's what makes us different. Zephyra awakened to the gentle hum of unfamiliar technology. Her golden eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the soft blue light of what appeared to be a medical bay. For a moment, panic seized her. Where was she? Then memory flooded back. The crash, the abandonment, the human medic who had defied all logic. To help her. "Good morning," or whatever the Velakari equivalent is, came Morrison's familiar voice. He sat nearby, monitoring holographic displays, showing her vital signs, the distinctive dual hark rhythm of her species, neural patterns unknown to human medicine. "A concept is emergence from radiance," she replied, surprised by the strength in her voice. She attempted to sit up, only to be gently restrained by Morrison's hand on her shoulder. "Easy. You've been unconscious for 2 days, while the nanites worked on your internal injuries." His touch was surprisingly gentle for someone she'd been. Trained to see as a savage, Zephyra's gaze traveled to where her left leg had been. Instead of the mangled wreckage she remembered, a sleek prosthetic gleamed in the medical bay's light. It was crude by Velakari standards, but clearly functional, with neural interface points that suggested it could be controlled by thought alone. "Temporary solution," Morrison explained, following her gaze. "The full regeneration matrix needs about 6 more days to grow you a proper replacement. This should get you mobile in the meantime." The concept was alien to Zephyra. In Velakari, society, regeneration technology was reserved for the elite, the already perfect. The damaged were discarded, not repaired. Why? She asked, the question encompassing everything she couldn't understand about his behavior. Morrison was quiet for a long moment, adjusting the medical scanners with practiced precision. "I became a medic because I believe life has value," he said finally. "All life. Doesn't matter which side of a war someone's on when they're bleeding out. But I am your enemy. I have killed your people. Yeah, and I've killed yours. War makes killers of us all." He met her gaze directly, something that would be considered aggressive among her kind. "But that doesn't mean we have to stop being human. Or in your case, doesn't mean you have to stop being Velakari." The medical bay's door slid open, and another human entered, female, wearing the same uniform as Morrison, but with different insignia. She was smaller than Morrison, with dark skin and intelligent eyes that immediately assessed Zephyra as both patient and potential threat. "Lieutenant Morrison," the newcomer said, her voice carrying authority. "I see our guest is awake." "Captain Rodriguez," Morrison replied, straightening slightly. "May I present Wing Commander Zephyra of the Velakari 3rd Assault Fleet. Commander, this is Captain Isabella Rodriguez, our base commander." Zephyra struggled to process the interaction. Among her people, a superior officer would never defer to a subordinate's judgment about an enemy prisoner. Yet Rodriguez seemed to accept Morrison's treatment of her without question. "Welcome to Forward Operating Base Harmony," Rodriguez said, approaching with careful, non-threatening movements. "I know this situation is ... unusual, but you're safe here while you recover." "I am a prisoner," Zephyra stated, though it came out as more of a question than a declaration. "You're a patient," Rodriguez corrected. "What happens after you recover?" "Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it." Over the following days, Zephyra began to understand the strange humans who had saved her life. Morrison visited regularly, monitoring her healing progress and adjusting the prosthetic's neural interface. He spoke to her as an equal, not a prisoner, asking about Velakari culture and sharing stories of his own world. "Earth sounds chaotic," Zephyra observed one day as Morrison helped her practice walking with the prosthetic. "It is," he agreed with a smile. "But chaos isn't always bad. Sometimes it's what lets us grow, change, become better than we were." The prosthetic leg responded to her thoughts, taking a few awkward steps before she found her balance. In Valakari society, such visible signs of damage would mark her as inferior, unworthy of respect. But Morrison beamed with pride at her progress. "The neural integration is remarkable," he said, making notes on his tablet. "Your brain adapted to the interface faster than any human would. There's so much we could learn from each other." "My people would not see it that way," Zephyra said quietly. "Knowledge sharing with enemies is forbidden." "Are we enemies?" Morrison asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. For the first time in her life, Zephyra wasn't sure. Asterisk. The alarm klaxons shattered the peaceful routine of forward operating base harmony like glass. Zephyra bolted upright in her medical bed, her warrior instincts immediately alert despite weeks of recovery. The prosthetic leg responded perfectly to her neural commands as she stood, the human technology now feeling natural after days of practice. "All personnel to battle stations," came Captain Rodriguez's voice over the intercom. "We have incoming Valakari assault ships. This is not a drill." Morrison burst through the medical bay doors, his face grim. "Zephyra, we need to get you to the secure bunker. If your people are coming back, no." Her voice cut through his words like a blade. "They are not coming for me. I am damaged, remember? They come for you." Through the reinforced windows, she could see the familiar crimson trails of Valakari. Attack craft descending through Titan VII's atmosphere. Her people had returned to finish what they started, to claim this world completely. The sight should have filled her with pride, with hope for rescue. Instead, a cold dread settled in. Her stomach. "Commander," Morrison said urgently, "whatever's happening, you'll be safer in the bunker. Will one?" Zephyra asked, her golden eyes meeting his. "When they find me alive, walking on alien technology, having been treated by enemies?" She shook her head. "They will see me as contaminated, corrupted by human influence." The base shuddered as the first energy blasts struck the outer defenses. Through the walls, Zephyra could hear the distinctive whine of Valakari plasma weapons, the shouts of human defenders rushing to their positions. This was the sound of war, familiar and terrible. Rodriguez's voice crackled over Morrison's radio. "All medical personnel, prepare for casualties." "And Morrison secure the prisoner." "She's not a prisoner," Morrison replied into the radio, his eyes never leaving Zephyra's face. "She's a patient under my care." The next wave of attacks hit closer, and the lights flickered. Zephyra watched Morrison's face in the intermittent illumination, seeing the conflict there. He was a medic, trained to preserve life, but he was also a soldier with duties to his own people. "Go," she said quietly. "Your people need you." "I'm not leaving you." "Then you are a fool." The words came out harsher than she intended, but fear made her voice sharp. "Do you think I will not betray you the moment my people arrive? Do you think loyalty can be changed by medical treatment and kind words?" Morrison was quiet for a long moment, studying her face. Outside, the battle intensified. "I think," he said finally, "that loyalty is earned, not commanded. And I think you're scared of what your people will do to you if they find you alive." The truth of his words hit her like a physical blow. She was terrified. In Valakari culture, survival when others had died was seen as cowardice unless it served a greater purpose. Being rescued by enemies, treated with their technology, learning their ways, it would be seen as the ultimate betrayal. "They will execute me," she whispered. "Not quickly, not with honor. They will make an example of me." "Then don't let them find you." The suggestion was so simple, so impossible, that Zephyra almost laughed. "Where would I go? I am Valakari. I know no other way to live. You could learn." Before she could respond, the medical bay's door exploded inward. 3 Velakari warriors in full combat armor stormed through the breach, their weapons trained on Morrison. Their leader, a tall female, with the scarred face of a veteran, stepped forward. "Wing Commander Zephyra Stormwind," she said in their native tongue, her voice carrying both relief and suspicion. "You live." "I live," Zephyra replied, automatically falling into the formal speech patterns of her people. "Though I should not." "They—" Leader's eyes narrowed as she took in the prosthetic leg, the human medical equipment, Morrison standing protectively nearby. "You have been ... treated by the enemy." "I have been treated by healers," Zephyra corrected, switching to trade language. So Morrison could understand. "There is a difference, is there?" The leader's weapon shifted to point at Morrison. "This human has contaminated you with their weakness, their false compassion. You should have died with honor rather than accept their help." "Honor?" Zephyra took a step forward, her prosthetic leg carrying her weight perfectly. "Where was honor when you abandoned me to die alone? Where was honor when you declared me unworthy of rescue?" The leader's face darkened. "You speak like them now. You have been corrupted." She gestured to her companions. "Kill the human. We will purify the commander on the ship." "No." Zephyra's voice rang out clear and strong. "I will not allow it." The medical bay fell silent except for the distant sounds of battle. 3 Velakari warriors stared at their former comrade, weapons ready, while Morrison stood frozen behind her. "You would defend an enemy?" the leader asked, her voice deadly quiet. "I would defend someone who showed me the honor my own people." "Forgot," Zephyra replied, her hand moving to Morrison's sidearm on his belt. For the first time in her life, she was about to fight her own kind. The standoff stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. Zephyra's hand rested on Morrison's sidearm, while 3 Velakari warriors kept their plasma rifles trained on both of them. The leader, whom Zephyra now recognized as Storm Captain HFY, from the 1st Assault Division, showed no emotion behind her battle mask. "You would draw weapons against your own kind?" HFY asked, her voice carrying the chill of deep space. "For a human?" "I would draw weapons against anyone who threatens an innocent healer," Zephyra replied, her fingers wrapping around the grip of Morrison's pistol. "Even my own kind." The words felt like poison in her mouth, but also like truth. Everything she had been taught about honor, about loyalty, about the superiority of Velakari culture was crumbling around her. These past weeks with Morrison and the other humans had shown her a different way of living, one based on compassion rather than perfection. "You are no longer Velakari," HFY declared. "You are contaminated, broken beyond repair. The Empire has no use for damaged goods." "Then I am free," Zephyra said, the realization hitting her like a physical blow. "Free to choose my own path." Morrison stepped forward, his hand covering hers on the weapon. "Commander, don't do this. Not for me." "Not for you," she replied, her eyes never leaving HFY's face. "For me, for who I choose to be." The leader's weapon began to rise, but Zephyra was faster. The human sidearm felt crude in her hands compared to Velakari weapons, but it was effective. The plasma bolt struck HFY's armor, spinning her around, and sending her crashing into the medical equipment. The other 2 warriors opened fire, their shots scorching the air where Zephyra had been standing, but she was no longer there. The prosthetic leg Morrison had built for her responded perfectly to her neural commands, launching her across the room with inhuman speed. She rolled behind a medical cabinet as plasma bolts shattered the wall behind her. "Zephyra!" Morrison shouted, pressing himself against the floor as energy weapons lit up the room. "The ventilation shaft!" She saw it immediately, a maintenance access panel large enough for a person to crawl through. But reaching it would mean exposing herself to enemy fire. More importantly, It would mean abandoning Morrison to face the warriors alone. "Go," she called back. "I will hold them." "Like hell you will." Morrison surprised her by drawing his own backup weapon and providing covering fire. His shots were accurate, forcing the two remaining warriors to take cover behind the doorway. It gave her the opening she needed. Zephyra leaped from cover, her prosthetic leg absorbing the impact as she landed next to Morrison. "You fight well for a healer," she said, helping him to his feet. "I fight terribly for a soldier," he replied with a grim smile, "but I'm learning." The warriors regrouped, advancing with military precision. Zephyra recognized the formation. They were preparing for a final assault that would overwhelm any defensive position. In 30 seconds, they would both be dead. "The emergency medical lockdown," Morrison said suddenly. "If we can trigger it, blast doors will seal this section." "How?" "The computer terminal by the entrance." But someone would have to get close. Enough to activate it, Zephyra understood immediately. The terminal was directly in the line of fire. Whoever tried to reach it would be exposed to both warriors' weapons. It was a suicide mission. "I will go," she said, checking her weapon's power level. "You stay here." "No." Morrison grabbed her arm. "I won't let you." "You do not let me do anything," she said, but not unkindly. "I choose this. For the first time in my life, I choose." Before he could protest further, she was moving. The prosthetic leg gave her speed and agility she had never possessed before, allowing her to weave between the warrior's shots like a dancer. Plasma bolts seared the air around her, close enough to feel their heat on her skin. She reached the terminal just as Vex High struggled to her feet, weapon raised. The storm captain's shot took Zephyra in the shoulder, spinning her around and sending her crashing into the wall. But her fingers found the emergency control. "Medical lockdown initiated," the computer announced in its calm voice. "Blast doors sealing in 5 seconds." Heavy steel barriers began descending from the ceiling, cutting off the warrior's advance. Vex High tried to rush forward, but the doors slammed shut with a finality that echoed through the medical bay. Morrison was at Zephyra's side in moments, his hands already working to stop the bleeding from her shoulder wound. "You magnificent, insane warrior," he said, his voice shaking. "You could have been killed." "I could have been free," she replied, then looked at him with something like wonder. "But I already am, aren't I?" Through the sealed doors, they could hear Vex High's furious voice. "This is not over, traitor. The Empire will hunt you to the ends of the galaxy." Zephyra smiled, expression that would have been impossible weeks ago. "Let them try," she said. "I am no longer theirs to command." 6 months later, Zephyra stood on the observation deck of the human starship Endeavor, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through the reinforced windows. Her reflection stared back at her, a Velakari warrior wearing a human medical uniform, her prosthetic leg now replaced with a fully regenerated limb that was indistinguishable from her original. The healing process had been remarkable, but it was nothing compared to the transformation in her spirit. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Morrison's voice came from behind her. He had been promoted to chief medical officer after his actions during the siege of Titan 7, though he still insisted on personally overseeing her care. "I was thinking about names," she said, turning to face him. "In Velakari culture, names are bestowed by the Empire based on achievements and bloodline. Zephyra Stormwind Zephyra, the warrior of the Stormhouse. It was never truly mine. And now? Now, I think I would like to choose my own name. Something that reflects who I am becoming, not who I was born to be." Morrison smiled, the expression warm and genuine. "What name would you choose?" "I was thinking Zephyra Morrison, if you would allow it." The silence stretched between them, filled with the gentle hum of the ship's engines. Morrison's face showed a mixture of surprise, honor, and something deeper, as Zephyra had learned to recognize as affection. "I would be honored," he said finally. "But are you sure? Taking a human name will mark you as a traitor to your people forever." "I am already marked," she replied, touching the small scar on her shoulder where Vexai's shot had grazed her. "The Empire considers me dead to them, but I am more alive now than I have ever been." Through the ship's communication system, Captain Rodriguez's voice announced their arrival at the Alpha Centauri medical station. It was to be Zephyra's first assignment as a xenobiological specialist, helping to treat wounded from both sides of the ongoing conflict. The war between humans and Velakari continued, but there were growing numbers of individuals on both sides who believed in a different path. "Are you ready for this?" Morrison asked as they prepared to disembark. "Working with wounded from your former fleet won't be easy." "No," Zephyra agreed, "but necessary. If others are to see that there is another way, someone must show them." The medical station was a marvel of human engineering, a rotating wheel of metal and crystal that served as neutral ground for treating casualties from the war. As they walked through the corridors, Zephyra saw the impossible made real human, and Velakari medical staff working side by side, their patients receiving care regardless of species or allegiance. "Dr. Morrison," called a familiar voice. They turned to see Dr. Sarah Chun, the station's chief xenobiologist, approaching with a tablet full of patient data. "And this must be our new colleague. I've heard remarkable things about your work." "Dr. Zephyra Morrison," she replied, still getting used to the sound of her chosen name. "I hope to contribute to your mission here." "Our mission is simple," Dr. Chun said, leading them toward the main treatment center. "We save lives, all lives. The politicians can worry about who's winning the war. We focus on making sure there are people left to enjoy the peace when it finally comes." The treatment center was organized chaos medical staff rushing between beds, monitors beeping with vital signs, the air filled with the sound of healing. In one bed, a young Velakari fighter lay unconscious, his armor removed to reveal wounds that would have meant death without immediate treatment. In the next bed, a human pilot was being treated for radiation exposure, her hand being held by a Velakari nurse who spoke softly in accented English. "It's beautiful," Zephyra whispered, watching the impossible scene. "It's what the future could look like," Morrison replied, "if enough people choose to believe in it." As they began their rounds, Zephyra found herself face to face with wounded Velakari soldiers who recognized her despite her human medical uniform. Some spat curses at her, calling her traitor and worse. Others watched her with curious eyes, seeing perhaps for the first time a different path than the one they had been born to follow. "Wing Commander Stormwind?" The voice was young, uncertain. Zephyra turned to see a junior pilot, barely old enough to have earned her wings, lying in a bed with bandages covering half her face. "I am Dr. Morrison now," Zephyra said gently, checking the young warrior's chart. "What is your name?" "Flight Lieutenant Kara Dawnbreaker," the pilot replied, then lowered her voice. "Is it true? Did you really choose to become human?" "I chose to become myself," Zephyra corrected, adjusting the foreline with practiced skill. "The humans simply gave me the freedom to make that choice." "And you are happy?" The question was asked with such innocent hope that Zephyra had to pause. Happiness was not a concept encouraged in Velakari society. Duty, honor, efficiency, these were the values that mattered. But happiness? "I am content," she said finally. "I wake each day knowing that my choices are my own. That is worth more than all the honor the Empire could bestow." Lieutenant Dawnbreaker was quiet for a long moment. "When I recover," she said. "Finally, when they come to take me back to the fleet, ... What if I don't want to go?" "Then you don't go," Zephyra said simply. The choice is yours. As the day wore on, Zephyra found herself in conversation with wounded soldiers from both sides. Some rejected her message, clinging to the certainties of their old loyalties. But others listened, asked questions, began to imagine a different way of being. That evening, as she and Morrison reviewed patient files in their shared quarters, he asked, "Do you think we're making a difference?" "I think we are planting seeds," she replied, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed divided into human and Velakari space, but simply infinite possibilities. And someday, those seeds will grow into something beautiful. "A garden among the stars," Morrison said, taking her hand. "A garden where all beings can choose their own path," Zephyra agreed. "It may take generations, but it will come." Outside their window, the first joint human Velakari research vessel was preparing for departure, its crew a mix of species working together toward a common goal. The war continued, but so did the hope for something better. Zephyra Morrison, formerly Wing Commander Zephyra Stormwind, fell asleep that night not to the sound of battle, but to the gentle hum of healing machines and the quiet conversations of former enemies learning to become friends. The universe was vast and full of possibilities, and for the first time in her life, she was free to explore them all.